sort of familiar to some extent. New? Okay. Have you known about the chanting of Hare Krishna for some time, or have you dabbled in spiritual knowledge? Or is it
6 months, yeah.
okay? Okay. All right. So, interestingly enough, many of us know this, but it's nice to say that we are sitting in a very historic place. This is where His Divine Grace, Bhaktivinoda Swami, Srila Prabhupada, he fulfilled the order of his spiritual teacher, spiritual guru, spiritual master, to take this knowledge purely intact out of the holy places of India and distribute it first to the English speakers and to everyone else and the phrase that the spiritual master said was very nice. To those not conversant with the language of the already established members. That's a nice way of saying everybody. And trying to do something pure and completely with the rarefied and completely beautiful motivation just to please God, which means to help all living beings without any desire for name, fame, profit, adoration, and distinction, is a very rare thing to see. And actually one who can situate himself in that pure consciousness, maintain it, and develop it and grow it more and more, actually such a person is fit to direct, I'm not going to use the word possess, but to direct all of the opulence, wealth, and fame, and influence, and aristocracy, learning of everyone in the world directed to the rightful place. So what might seem to be in the beginning to be, by material comparison, to be negligible, even in the eyes of those who are grossly illusioned by materialism, laughable, ultimately triumphs in a very great way. So Srila Prabhupada, he came here at the age of 69 from India, and he was so poor at the time that the only way he could come here was by begging a free ticket on a steamship cargo boat. And then it was a 5-week journey, starting in Calcutta, going all the way down the southern tip of India, up towards Bombay, now called Mumbai, across the Arabian Sea, into the Red Sea, going through the Suez Canal, into the Mediterranean Sea, going through the Straits of Gibraltar, and this journey took place from the second week of August till the third week of September. And crossing the Atlantic Ocean in late August and the first part of September, that is hurricane season, right? All the hurricanes are in the Atlantic Ocean starting in September. And the captain of the ship said that, I've never seen such a calm Atlantic crossing. It was like, what is that lake that they call upstate? Lake Placid, right? It's just calm, like anything. And Prabhupada said that Krishna has taken charge of the ship. If the Atlantic had shown its usual face, perhaps I would have died. And when he landed here in New York, Brooklyn 17th Street Pier, which is now where they have a city sanitation receiving area, and appropriately enough, with an elevated roof deck, a Home Depot. Back home, back to Godhead Depot. So, but it's not a pier that, a dock anymore. So there was an organization at the time, which doesn't exist, which was created in the Gilded Age in the late 19th century to accompany, to help unaccompanied minors and young women to get to their destination. Travelers Aid Society, which was still functioning in 1965. So a representative met Srila Prabhupada at the dock. Prabhupada said, I didn't know whether to turn left or right. And he had 40 Indian rupees, which at that time was the equivalent of $7 US, and 40 rupees couldn't be exchanged into dollars at this time. I don't even know now if you come here with Indian rupees, can you change them into dollars? Anyway, but he had $20, which he had sold his set of 3 volumes of the first part of the Srimad Bhagavatam to the captain. They were $6 each. $18, the captain gave him $20, keep the change. So $20, and he's escorted by someone from Travelers Aid Society. He had a host in a place called, which has now become famous for not a very good reason, Butler, Pennsylvania. So he was taken from Red Hook, Brooklyn to the Port Authority bus terminal, put on a bus to Pittsburgh, met by his host in Pittsburgh, and then drive an hour and a half north through the Allegheny Valley to this place, Butler, Pennsylvania, where he stayed for a month. Then he had a acquaintance, a guru, quasi kind of guru, who made a name and fame and money for himself by teaching kind of watered down, speculative, impersonalistic philosophy in the name of yoga. And he had a penthouse apartment at 33 Riverside Drive, which is 75th Street, and a hatha yoga studio in 100 West 72nd Street, which is Columbus Avenue, 1 block from Central Park, like that. And he allowed him to stay there. Anyway, I can say many more things, but it was a very big struggle. That was one of the coldest winters on record, 65, 66, snowiest ones also. And somehow some young people came to know of him, and they kind of told Prabhupada to come down here to the East Village, which was kind of like the New York City equivalent of the San Francisco Haight-Ashbury at the time. And one thing led to the other, and everybody pitched in for the first month's rent, which was $100 for this storefront. What is it now? The monthly rent for this storefront?
It's over $3,000.
Over $3,000. And this is this address, 26 2nd Avenue, also includes the rear court building, which is a 5-story building. And you could have the 2C apartment, which is right, you can see it there, there's 3 windows, for another $85 a month. And there was no security deposit, you have to put down 3 months rent or something. Just trust it on their word. Probably had no idea where the next month's rent was gonna come from. Anyway, one thing led to the other, and here we are some 59 years later, and Prabhupada's movement is all over the world. I think if you count the number of temples, farms, ashrams, restaurants, different types of communities, the number is over like 3,000. Am I right? Maybe more?
It's a very large number.
Very large number. And the books, which Prabhupada struggled to print 3 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam in Indian printing in New Delhi with all kinds of typos and different types of font, you know. The binding, you open the book and the binding wasn't holding everything together very nicely. So now he established his own publishing company, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, and they have headquarters in at least half a dozen places around the world, and the books are published in practically every language of the world. Practically all the languages, a complete set of everything that Prabhupada wrote. So very, very impressive. So if you do for the right reason, the whole world is actually yours. One time Srila Prabhupada was walking with his disciples here in New York City, and some of the disciples and we're pointing to these like very fabulous buildings. And he said, wouldn't it be nice if we could own this building and use it in Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada's reply is, we already own it because Krishna owns everything. In other words, everything is Krishna's property, ultimately. But still, at the same time, Prabhupada was very keen to want to see the best places for use in Krishna service. While living here, at that time, there's still here the Gold Dome building at 23rd Street in Flatiron, which at the time was called the Metropolitan Insurance Company, and also the Con Edison Clock Tower on 14th Street. It would be nice to have buildings like that. So this tiny little storefront, and there are magnificent temples all over the world. So the Bhagavad Gita is especially, the book is spoken directly by Krishna, it's Krishna's instructions to Arjuna in a very critical and I could say anxious situation. All diplomacy and all types of consideration to avoid a very serious conflict, a very big war, millions of people's lives. All hopeful peace talks failed. And it's just inevitable. It's just, here it is, the moment of truth. And to help Arjuna understand his duty, so-called pacifism or refusing to fight against an aggressor, one who's clearly in the wrong and has to be stopped, this is dereliction of duty and ultimately cowardice. So sometimes to stand your ground, defend the innocent and defend which is righteous, that sometimes, not all the time, rarely, but sometimes that is what is required in the service of the Lord. So under these extraordinary conditions, Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna to help him understand that ultimately on the spiritual platform, the platform of actual knowledge and realization, what is ultimate reality is that everyone is spirit soul, and the material body that each and every one of us are inhabiting is sure to come to an end at a certain point under the laws of nature and within the jurisdiction of the time element. On the spiritual platform, time is conspicuous by its absence, or there's time not like the time that we are under. No one likes to get old, and within old age you lose the so-called attractiveness or handsomeness of the body that was there in the younger days, and then invalidity, infirmity, disease, the diminishment of the strength of the body, and then ultimately death. Death is a very frightening thing for those who are devoid of spiritual knowledge. For those who have, in this verse that we're going to read today, describes, use their valuable time. They have the opposite saying, time is money, especially in a city like New York. Time is money, right? To see a lawyer, right? How much does it cost? Like $400, $500 an hour in some cases, right?
Some cases, $1,500.
$1,500.
$2,000.
$2,000. That's right. Okay. Krishna will give you justice quickly and for free. So, and there's the saying that the English king, time and tide wait for no man, that even if you were prepared to spend billions and trillions of dollars, you cannot buy back 1 second that is that has gone into the past. So the actual value of human life, the word is artada, to gain spiritual wealth. And the wealth of understanding your actual spiritual identity separate from this material body is the greatest treasure. There's nothing more valuable than that. Not only is it valuable, if you become a billionaire or a trillionaire, well, that's good for you. But how does it help other people? Unless you distribute it and give it all away. What is that saying? You make the money and then your children or your grandparents squander it, right? Like you save all the money but spiritual wealth, materially, if I have one and I give you one minus one, you have the one and now I have zero. But if I give you one and I have one, then I have two. And if you now have the one and you give out the one to somebody else, then you'll have two. So if everybody is doing like that, and everybody's completely confident that you're not going to get ripped off, or it's not like a Ponzi scheme or something like that, that is called Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, an ever-increasing ocean of transcendental happiness and opulence. That is the spiritual world. So the pure devotee, when they come to this world, they bring that formula completely, it surrounds them. And it infects or influence in a good way. In fact, Prabhupada said we should spread the Krishna disease, the Krishna infection. All right? And the chanting of Hare Krishna is the full embodiment of the spiritual world, Krishna's personality, Krishna's energy, everything. And it's actually the avatar for Krishna in this age. The Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter, Krishna describes whenever and wherever there was a decline in real religion. Real religion means dharma. Dharma means the prescribed duties for all living entities, especially human beings, how they can live comfortably and happily in this world, achieve liberation from the chained victimization of repeated birth, death, disease, and old age, and ultimately fulfill the highest objective and fulfill all one's desires by renovating the dormant prema bhakti inside your heart. Prema bhakti means pure spiritual love, which is based upon one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is automatically shared between one living entity and another. Why is it my family, are my dear ones, and others are strangers? For the pure devotee of the Lord, every living entity is their family member. And that is the actual reality. We're all brothers and sisters in a big, giant family. It's called the Achyuta Gotra, the family of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Srila Prabhupada, the Srimad Bhagavatam, he came with the first canto, but it's 12 cantos, and he spent the rest of his time on this planet translating it, and even then with initiating disciples, establishing this movement, traveling all around the world, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, up until 1977. He only got up to the beginning of the 10th canto, which is the largest of the volumes because it deals directly with all of Krishna's pastimes. Most cantos have anywhere between 15 to 29 or 30 chapters, but the 10th canto has 90 chapters. But he wanted the Bhagavad Gita to be translated as quickly and published as quickly as possible. And there's an interesting little story It's amazing, and it's also humorous. And this also shows the importance of public chanting of Hare Krishna. They went to, where I just was today, Washington Square Park, beautiful sunny day, and tried to do public chanting there. But at that time, it was kind of a little more, I don't know, how should we say, conservative place, and there was a police presence, and they actually tried to chant on the grass. It was in summertime, and there was a sign, "Keep off the grass." So two policemen come and say, "Hey, can't you read the sign?" And then the people there were a little bit kind of snooty-tooty and not, a little more materialistic. And so Tompkins Square Park over here in Alphabet City, at the time, as I was saying earlier, was like the New York City version of Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. All the young people were there. So they had a very, very, very fabulous reception. So much so that they made it a weekly happening, and it became very, very, very famous. So one record producer who had a studio at, it's called the Delphi Studios, 46th Street off of Broadway, right up in Times Square. So they say, we're going to make a record. So they made the record, and the record was just simply, 33 and a third, 20 minutes of just chanting Hare Krishna, and the other side was Prabhupada chanting prayers to the spiritual master. You can find that online, YouTube. It's called the Happening album. So it became such a big hit. Radio stations were playing it. Even over in the West Village music scene, people were playing the tunes, with saxophones and other music. So it became a big means of support. You can send $3 plus 50 cents for shipping, and all of a sudden, a request for the album came from Macmillan and Collier book publishing company, very big book publishing, and they have London, Tokyo. So they had like 53rd and Lex, up by Grand Central, and became one of the devotees, his name was Brahmananda. He was like helping Prabhupada in many different ways. He was just so excited. He went up to Prabhupada in the room. What should we do? What should we do? And Prabhupada said, you should go there directly. Don't mail it. Put on a suit and tie and go up there and hand deliver the record. So he went up there, and he saw that the person that was ordering the record was just a clerk, an accountant in one of the secondary offices. And he was like, how is this person going to help me? No, Prabhupada said to him, you go up there, you hand deliver the record, and you tell them that you have a Bhagavad Gita you want to publish. Because they couldn't get it published, normally, because just like, I was going to publish a religious book and this and that. And at that time, even they were friends with Allen Ginsberg, the famous beat poet. He was part of the Jack Kerouac and all that, and he had his own publisher. He was a very famous man. He lived on 10th Street between A and B, on the north perimeter of Tompkins Square Park, and he became a real supporter. And he couldn't get it published with his people. And so Brahmananda's go, really? Should I bring the Bhagavad Gita with me? No. Should I tell him about you and bring somebody? No. You just tell them that you have a Bhagavad Gita you want to publish. So he said, okay. So he meets this person. He's just an accountant, and he's like crestfallen. And then all of a sudden, this obviously really big person from the company comes into this accountant's office. I have one here. And he I'm just going to do what Prabhupada told me to do. So he shakes the man's hand after being introduced. This is Mr. James Wade. He is one of our senior editors. And he said, okay, this is Mr. Bruce Scharf, and he says, and he says, like hypnotized, I'm just gonna do what I say without thinking. I have a Bhagavad Gita I want to publish. I said, really? A Bhagavad Gita? Complete? Yes. Written by a Swami? Yes. Here in New York? Well, that's exactly what we need. We already have a Quran. We got the Torah. We got the I Ching. We got the Buddhist book. I needed you have a Bhagavad. We'll publish it. Sight unseen. So the chanting of Hare Krishna ultimately all knowledge and realization will come from the chanting of Hare Krishna. So the Bhagavad Gita was published because of interest in the chanting of Hare Krishna. So all of those things and so much more happened in this very room, which we're trying to make look exactly like it was back then. All things are as they were then, except now you are there. There's, right, time travel show from the 1960s. So the 7th chapter is called Knowledge of the Absolute. And this chapter is readying us for a very amazing chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme. Complete knowledge of how to leave this body, leave this world fearlessly, in complete confidence. Just like, say, you know, we're here in New York and we're going to transfer to a vacation paradise. Or even better, that we're going to go to some beautiful place and it's not even a hotel or anything, but it's like our friends or family members, they're ready for it. We're going to go there and we have full knowledge of what it is. And I'm going to leave, you know, the thing that I graduated from. I did my time, but I'm going to something by far better. So these are the last 3 verses, 28, 29, and 30 of the chapter. And this is after Krishna has previously been describing his authority and his position in this material world, and ultimately how those who recognize their relationship with him ultimately get everything required, as I was saying, to live in this world comfortably and ultimately transcend the whole unwanted position of being in a place of birth, death, disease, and old age, and achieve complete perfection in all desired personal variegatedness. This is also described in this chapter, how not to make the mistake that liberation and perfection is a void or impersonalism, which is what the Buddhists teach, which is ultimately something that was allowed or even authorized by Krishna for a particular reason, but it is not a philosophy that it is meant to be perpetually taught, propagated, and certainly it won't lead one to desired perfection, impersonalism, and voidism. In fact, Srila Prabhupada, there is a glorification of him, and it's describing that he has come to save the Western countries, which is now the whole world influenced by Western atheism and crass materialism. He's come to save the Western countries from impersonalism and voidism. People don't have knowledge of what is pure spiritual personalism, which is the ultimate perfection of life. Everyone is seeking unmotivated, pure personal relationships with others on different levels, and frustrated in finding them to try to seek relief in impersonalism and voidism. That's ultimately like if you have a boil or something or some very painful in one part of your body, to think that suicide is the answer. How is that the answer? You know. Okay, so this is text number 28. We say the Sanskrit. We can all take a turn after we go through it 3 times. Those who wish can say, and we can respond. Then we'll say the translation and hear Prabhupada's purport or commentary. Yesham. You can open phones, or do you have books? And Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 28. Okay. Yesham Tvantagatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvandva Moha Nirmukta Bhajante Mam Chidabrata Yesham tvantagatam papam
Yesham tvantagatam papam
jananam punya karmanam
jananam punya karmanam
Dvanda moha nirmukta
Tvedvandvan moha nirmukta
Bhajanti mam dridabrataha
Bhajante mam dritavrata
Yesham tvantagatam papam
Yesham tvantagatam papam
jananam punya karmanam
jananam punya karmanam
Dvanda moha nirmukta
Tvedvandvan moha nirmukta
Bhajanti mam dridabrataha
Bhajante mam dritavrata
Yesham tvantagatam papam
Yesham tvantagatam papam
jananam punya karmanam
Jananam punya karmanam
Dvanda moha nirmukta
Tvedvandva moha nirmukta
Bhajanti mam dridabrata.
Bhajante mam dritavrata
And once more, Yesham tvantagatam papam
Yesham tvantagatam papam
jananam punya karmanam
Jananam punya karmanam
Dvanda moha nirmukta
Tvedvandva moha nirmukta
Bhajanti mam dridabrataha.
Bhajante mam dritavrata Yesham tvantagatam papam
Yesham tvantagatam papam
Jananam punya karmanam
jananam punya karmanam
Tvedvandva moha nirmukta
Tvedvanda moha nirmukta
Bhajante mam dritavrata
bhajante mam dritavrata Yesham tvantagatam papam
Yesham tvantagatam papam
jananam punya karmanam
Jananam punya karmanam
Tvedvanda moha nirmukta
Tvedvandva moha nirmukta
bhajante mam dritavrata
Bhajante mam dritavrata
Yeshanto Antagatam Papam
Yesham tvantagatam papam
Jananam Punna Karmanam
Jananam punya karmanam
Vedando Moha Nirmukta
Tvedvandva moha nirmukta
Bhajanti Mam Dhirabrata
Bhajante mam dritavrata
Anyone else? Okay. This is the word-for-word translation. Yesham,
Yesham
whose,
whose
to,
to
but, antagatam,
Antagatam
completely eradicated,
completely eradicated
papam,
Papam
sin,
sin
jananam,
Jananam
of the persons,
the person
punya,
Punya
pious,
Pious.
karmanam,
Karmanam
whose previous activities,
whose previous activities
they, dvanda,
Dvandva
of duality,
duality
moha,
Moha
delusion,
delusion
nirmukta,
Nirmukta
free from,
free from
bhajante,
Bhajante
engage in devotional service,
in devotional service
mam,
Mam
to me,
to me
chidabrata,
Jidavata
with determination.
determination
Translation. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Okay, we can repeat. I'll say phrase by phrase. Persons who have acted piously
Persons who have acted piously
in previous lives
in previous lives
and in this life,
and in this life
and whose sinful actions
and whose sinful actions
are completely eradicated,
are completely eradicated
are freed from the dualities of delusion,
are free from the dualities of delusion
and they engage themselves in my service
service
with determination.
with determination.
Srila Prabhupada's purport. Those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness and the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, that's Lord Rishabhadev's teachings to his sons, text number 2, that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dvaram ahar vimukte. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamo dvaram yositam sangi sangam. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. These are standard invocation prayers that devotees use before speaking as responsibly as possible on behalf of the disciplic succession. And in the Bhagavad Gita, I believe both paperback and hardbound, in the beginning, the preface, these prayers are there, both in the Sanskrit and the English introduction, actually. The beginning of the introduction. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakavitamscha. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dinabandho Jagatpate, Gopisha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hari Priye, Vanchakalpatarubhyas Cha, Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha, Titanam Bhavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yesha Tanta Gatam Papam, Jananam Punyakarmanam, Dedvanda Moha Nirmukta, Bhajanti Mam Dridabrata. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So, because we are eternal, correspondingly, or in parallel, our spiritual existence in eternity is something that is very, very, very great and sublime. So we are born into the particular life that we have, the body, the sex, gender, status of life, place, good fortune, bad fortune, some would say luck, providential arrangement, different types of association, based upon our aggregate karma and desire. Or another way of saying it is deserve and desire. Deserve would be how much money you at the same time saved and spent. Say many people are out, beautiful night, let's go clubbing, let's go partying. And so if you spend all your extra money, or even if you're a gambler or whatever, and you go into what you need just for your basic living, then you have to wait for your next paycheck, right? So if we spend the freedom that we've been given, especially in this human form of life, we spend it in the wrong way, just like, I'm thinking of easy examples. A driver's license. What is a license? License is a allowance or a privilege. But if you break the standard expectations, we'll use that word, of that license, then it could be suspended or revoked. So human form of life is responsible life, because your intelligence, the sensual ability is a lot more than those in the animal species, bird species, aquatic species, insect species, plant species. A tree can live a very fabulous lifespan, but it has to remain in one place for hundreds and even, and go to the redwoods in California, thousands of years. What good is such a long lifespan? Or the tortoise, the turtle, they can live hundreds and hundreds of years. Are they really affecting world change? What can they do for all living entities in such a way? But the human being, if he lives properly, he can create a situation by which all different types of living entities, not just human beings, can actually be liberated from the cycle of repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. That is what is mentioned here, that if one associates with the pure devotee, all perfection is there. Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, it is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 552 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service. Rendering service means helping them. And what is a pure devotee doing? Pure devotee is trying to distribute the facility of freedom from birth and death, disease and old age, and help every living entity understand their siddha deha, their ultimate spiritual body. So to support someone, to render service to someone doing that is glorious. Here's another example showing the difference between mundane charity and ultimate shreyasi, the best activity. Say you're in like Penn Station and you come upon some young child, 3 or 4 years old, 2.5 years old, crying. What's the very first instinct? Where's the mother? Where's the father? Where's the proper guardian? Anybody ever have that happen? And and then we're like in the split, oh, that's my child. I'll say that doesn't happen. What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to alert the proper authorities, the police, let them take charge of the child, get that child to safety, that they won't be exploited, trafficked, or worse. But if you say, oh, look, you're crying, hey, let's go into the Hudson newsstand. Can I buy you a ham sandwich? You like comic books? How about a nice, very healthy, Gatorade, or a big gulp Slurpee with all the food dyes, and you feel good now? Humphrey Bogart, here's looking at you, kid, all right? And then you walk away. What kind of charity is that? They might, whatever, for like a minute or two, but they're in the same terrible position, unsheltered, vulnerable, at risk. So to try to help someone's temporary material situation is just, you'd be written up in the Daily News, you'd probably, or the New York Post, whatever. Think of some rhyming headline to make you look like the idiot that you are, you know. Leave the kid there, you know. But if you know, reunite the child with the mother, you know, then you're glorious. You'll be held as a hero. You'll be, you know, great person. So to render service to such persons, but to speak of trying to become one yourself, see, I brought it up. We'll read a little bit from the 5th canto. One can attain the path of liberation from material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. For those not interested in doing so, the path to hell is wide open. The Mahatmas are equiposed. They do not see any difference between one living entity and another. I have experienced, we're doing Harinam like outside now because the weather is warmed up, and we're like in Washington Square Park and Union Square Park, and there are a lot of protests that come through, and they're, you know, protesting many different things that they're very, very strong about. Sometimes they're very angry about, but when they see us, nobody has a problem. In fact, some of the people take a break from the heavy yelling and screaming and come, and I put a sign, you know, people say, you should put a little something, say what you're doing. So I have a nice sign, I have an artist devotee made with beautiful flowers blooming. It says, come chant with us for peace. Because literally that's what we're doing. They're very peaceful and fully engaged in devotional service. They are devoid of anger and they work for the benefit of everyone. They do not behave in an abominable way. Such people are known as Mahatmas. The human body is like a junction. One may either take the path of liberation or the path leading down to a hellish condition. So if you spend all your money, you squander your Daivi Sampat, your good position to, you know, then in the next life, you have to pay back that debt. You'll be born in a more destitute situation. And it's also to teach you to do the right thing. That is why there's so many different statuses. Not everyone is equal by how much money they have, what is their position, what is their education, what is their ability to live in this material world without the hard struggle for existence. In Krishna conscious, if Krishna conscious and godly people are in charge of the ministerial responsibilities of this planet, then all necessary goods, commodities, and services, everything everyone needs, will be supplied in abundance without any hard struggle. Why has it become more and more difficult to raise a family? That there can be, that the parents don't have to work, both husband and wife, or their two jobs. I remember I grew up in the 1960s, and we lived in a house that cost $25,000. It was a five-bedroom house, two-car garage, driveway in the suburbs. My parents could send 3 children to college and pay for their tuition. We owned 2 cars, et cetera, et cetera. Where are you going to find that these days, you know? That's because ungodly people are in charge, and what happens is everyone has to struggle unnecessarily. That's just one example. We can give a whole seminar on that, but we won't. How one can take these paths is described herein. On the path of liberation, one associates with Mahatmas, and on the path of bondage, one associates with those who are attached to sense gratification, materialistic activities. To remain attached to the modes of material nature, unattached, one should avoid associating with those who are materialistic. There are two types of materialists. One who is attached to unrestricted sex life and sense gratification, and the other is simply a non-devotee. People can't even understand the simplest concept, which is even a religious concept, that life begins at conception. And the scientists have analyzed that, your unique DNA is made at that, is created. Created means that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself has made a decision that a soul will now take shelter in that womb of that mother when the sperm meets the ovum. Right at that time. People don't want to take responsibility for their actions. And the result is, honestly, I can't think of a better word than insanity. I can't understand the simplest truth. Even today, people, what is a woman? And people have all types of crazy speculations. This is symptomatic of everyone following a demoniac path of life, completely devoid of anything to do with God and reality. So on the positive side is association with Mahatmas, and on the negative side is avoidance of non-devotees and woman hunters, or sex, people looking for sex. I just walked here from Washington Square Park. Of course, it's early. Everybody is all dolled up. Everybody is just drinking, clubbing. It is stated in the Bhagavatam that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that, forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate, dependent, in loving connaissance with Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the greatest violation of God's law, or it is the mother of all other offenses and unwanted things, which will ultimately cause your own self-destruction and cause misery to others. Unless one is reinstated in one's own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in His transcendental loving service with determination. There are two aspects to materialistic illusion. One is to be placed into it, and the other is to be covered by it. If you're kidnapped, initially you try to fight it off, and then they take you to like brainwash you and deprogram you. But if you're at a certain point, you'll succumb to that brainwashing. That is the material illusion that makes you think that the abominable situation is very nice. There's one species of life, the pig, the hog. And you see, I've seen in India, maybe other countries, the hogs, they run free. They're the sanitation department in a lot of these places that don't have, underground sewers, or we call modern sewers. They love to eat the stool and urine. That is, for them, that is like the highest happiness. And they purposefully will roll in the sewer water, especially like it's hot, like in India right now, it's like some places like 110 degrees in the daytime. For them, this is their relief, to roll in the sewer. Can you imagine thinking that that is a very nice way to live? And their relationships, no conception, mother, sister, complete incest, whoever, whatever, 14 times in an hour. That's the life of a hog. This is the covering potency of the illusory energy. So that's affecting all species of life. So the human being is meant to be completely free from the illusory influence. Now, if one is not striving for reality, for purity, then one insidious aspect of this material illusion is that you will think that those who are actually striving for purity and doing that which is required to achieve it and maintain it are crazy people. And they're like what we're doing is the real thing, you know. They'll shout at you, get a job, what's the matter with you? You're crazy, you know, get a life, what are you doing? Sometimes people, they're like in shock, why are you doing this? And you know what my answer to them is? This is one of my favorite retorts. I'll answer the question with asking them a question. Why are you doing what you're doing? Blah, 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 you know. And they say, well, because I like it. Right. I hope you're doing what you're doing because you like doing it. So I like doing I'm doing what I'm doing because I like doing what I'm doing. So that is the key. That the pleasure that comes from purely trying to satisfy the soul of your very self, your real self, Krishna, that is the highest happiness. And no happiness can compare to it. You take someone who owns what is the Central Park Tower or the Steinway Tower, what are some of those like highest priced penthouse apartments, you know, with a 360-degree view, $65 million or even more.
Over
100 million.
Approaching 200.
$200 million.
Approaching.
Okay? He said, would you like to come and live a hog's life and roll in the gutter? You say to that person, they'll look at you like you're crazy. That is the comparison of being established in pure love of Godhead. That comparison is so great. Would you come down and you could be the guy who owns the $200 million penthouse apartment. If you completely give up devotional service and give up your position as an Uttamadhikari, Maha-Bhagavad, supreme lover, and just be someone in the material world, and we're going to give you in the topmost position. For such a pure devotee will look at that just like you give that comparison to that person in the Steinway Tower to come and be a hog rolling in the gutter in some rural third world country village. That's how great it is. So the knowledge of how great that is the goal of human life, to cultivate and uncover. And it's not an artificial knowledge, that knowledge is dormant inside you, but it has been forgotten. Krishna consciousness is not an artificial hype up. It is an uncovering of your original staibhav, your original ecstasy, your original personality. And that's what the time of our life is meant to cultivate and reestablish. Another good example is given, say you inherit, when did they have treasure chests and buried? Was that the Tudor period, the 1600s? Anyway, something, 1700. Say you inherit in your family, you become, the multi-acre property with like a Victorian 200-year-old mansion on it, or even older mansion, and it's your property. You own it. You're the heir. You're the heir to the you're the last surviving relative. If you don't know that your forefathers in the 16 or 1700s buried a treasure chest, which by today's value could be worth billions of dollars. You own it. It's on your property. But because you don't know it's there, it's like you don't own it at all. That's our buried treasure of love of Godhead within us. So the spiritual master, he comes and he gives us the treasure map. You know, you could dig on the western side, the southern side, the northern side. You know, you can dig forever. Say your property is like central, 843 acres. You know, you'll never find it. And the materialistic way of life is you don't even. I tell you, oh, you got the greatest treasure. I'm happy, you know, clubbing in the East Village. I don't need to. That is how dangerous is the Maya, the material illusion. So the chanting of Hare Krishna and reading the knowledge from self-realized persons and associating and helping those to distribute this knowledge. This is foolproof, guaranteed way to increase your spiritual asset and ultimately be confident and fully encouraged that you're on the right path to achieve complete perfection in whatever remaining time is left in our individual lifetime. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Prabhu, so, is it that in the same way that the hog is unaware that there's that his way of living is actually not good? In the same way the hog cannot understand that. Is that the same reason that the person who owns the $200 million apartment cannot understand that his lifestyle is not good compared to the transcendentalist's lifestyle?
Similar. It's the same. There's a Sanskrit term, avriyanatmika, covering potency. And in fact, even what did Jesus Christ purportedly say? It is easier to thread a camel through an eye of the needle than to bring a rich man to the kingdom of God. And we have one great saintly devotee named Queen Kunti, and she has stated that those who are overly proud because of having beautiful body, being a so-called highly learned, having a lot of money, and being in an aristocratic so-called position, you know, great family or you know the high nation or something, they cannot call out to you, my dear Lord, with sincere feeling because they are they are overly proud. So sometimes it is necessary to be to have these things taken away, and then the ability or perceivable opportunity to try to become happy with these things in the material world that is why old age should be respected ultimately, because those who are elders in society, they should have come to a satisfactory realization of what is the actual meaning and value of life. And you know, to see like old people trying to behave like 18 or 20-year-olds is like, you know, we even have a saying, act your age. And in classic cultures, the elders are respected because for centuries and millennium, they were actually able to give good association and set a good example, and you know, and young people would be eager to take their advice. And what to speak of a simple thing like, they worked so hard for you when you were young, now take care of them when they were old. We would just put them in an old age home, you know, you're interfering with our enjoyment, you know. Not good. So it's relative, it's proportionate, but yes, the same principle is there. But I gave the hog definition. You know, this is perhaps the most drastic one you can think of or come up with. You know, other animals are much more clean and orderly and organized and let's say chaste. I think like the wolf is completely loyal to one mate for their whole life. So there's good examples, but the hog is there, and actually it's actually, if you desire to live like that, then the human form of life is not meant to live like a hog. But if that's and the hog will eat anything and everything, no discrimination. So if that's what you want, and you really want that, then here's the life for you. Just like in any species of life, the male and the female, that they think that they're the most handsome and beautiful. There's not like interspecial attraction. You know, they breed so many different types of dogs, you know, but like you're a dog, and so you'll like, and so they have a little more variety. You know, the German Shepherd is attracted to the Cocker Spaniel or whatever, you know, the Saint Bernard. Anyway, who was that Marmaduke? The Great Dane, you know, the thing is almost as big as a horse, you know. Anyway,
It's like
something else, anything else, different, you know.
Oh, yeah. I had a question. So you said the Mahatmas is the...
Mahatma literally means, Maha means great, and Atma means soul, great soul,
So to serve
elevated soul.
To serve Mahatma is very great.
That's
And
what
then
that the
you
literal
said-
meaning of the word, yeah.
And then you said the opposite is demoniac is when...
Well, actually, if you, in Sanskrit would be Duratma. Su is a prefix which means very good and auspicious. Like you'll see so many different Indian names, Sunanda, Subhadra, Sugoshi. Su means like very good. Sumetasa, very good intelligence, where Du means bad. Du means like miscreant, demoniac, you know, someone who's like plotting and scheming to, you know, like, let's enslave human society, you know, and like, or let's minimize, let's cut the population, or let's introduce some like toxic disease, and you know, whatever. This is demoniac thinking. It's very bad thinking.
So it's not a devotee and the one who chasing.
Huh?
One is a non-devotee. Could you expand the second side of it?
One who is a Su is a devotee. Is one who's doing good.
Right.
Right. So, you know, so therefore, there's many people, they want to dedicate their life to help other people, and that is glorious. But the ultimate good that you can do, like I gave the example of the child, mother and child reunion, you know, you reunite the lost soul with their mother, with Krishna, and all their problems are solved. They're protected, they're going to be nurtured, they're going to be loved, everything. So to give people knowledge of their original identity, their real home, their real shelter, their real happiness, that is the greatest welfare work, is the greatest charity. And it is the greatest thing that you can use the time and energy and asset, whatever, money, wealth, influence, whatever you have, to work for that benefit. Like it said, they work for the benefit of all living entities equally. They're equal to everyone. That is the best. That is topmost. Shreya Uttamam.
And the other association with the wrong kind of people is what you said.
Yes, association where like if you like a crystal glass, you know, like whatever light will come through it, it will look like that. So if you associate with good people, you know, we are not. What is it? No man is an island unto himself. If you want to become a drunkard, associate with drunkards. Or if you associate with those who are, you know, taking drugs, you'll become a drug addict. And what did they even created societies, NA. You know, for people who don't want to be drug addicts, they don't want to be alcoholics, they will associate with people with the same determination, and they have support groups to help each other. And what they have said, whatever it is, don't use. And then they have like anniversaries. I am 20 years clean. And then the people who are like become a sponsee to others who are, you know, checking with your sponsee. You know, that, okay, I'm having a rough time, this and that. That's association.
Thank you.
Please, yes.
talk, but if I'm being honest, I'm pretty offended about what you said about life beginning at conception. And I think
Okay.
you have a lot of influence over a lot of people, and I just think it's important that you educate yourself a little bit more, because a lot of people's lives are being destroyed by the laws that are being created right now in our country. And so that's my comment about that. And then I'm not sure what you were meaning to say about women. What defines a woman or what defines a man? And I just don't see how it's relevant. However, people want to express themselves as long as they're not hurting other people. I don't know why.
Well, a woman and a man, a woman has a particular set of reproductive organs, so does a man. And biologically, which is set up by the Lord's nature, those things are distinct.
That's not true though. There are XXY, XY, YY. There are all sorts of different expressions biologically.
Expression can be there, but your reproductive body, the body of a man and a woman are distinct.
There are people with both sex organs, with a uterus and testicles.
Those are very rare situations.
There are, but they exist and they're important, valuable lives.
Just like the women's sports, those who are biological male and wish to transfer themselves to by sex change or whatever, their bodily structure is clearly different than a biological woman. I mean, for that particular issue, a thought came to my mind: make a transgender league, and then compete amongst themselves, but not to go amidst biological women and claim that you're a woman. That's just not right. That's just not fair.
As far as sports go, and science, I'm not as educated as I think I need to be to have this discussion. But I just think it's important with your influence over people that you educate yourself more on the science behind it, because I think it's much more complex than the way it was presented here.
When I'm saying it's coming down from the revealed scriptures, which are spoken by Krishna himself, and also been great saintly persons in disciplic succession for millions of years in different ages that we're living in. So I have to stand by what I said as being the truth. I would say for you also, you could read the revealed scriptures, the Vedas, and see what they have to say. Don't just take my word for it. I'm just who I am. Sorry if I offended you, but we have a very serious problem in this. This is called the age of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is when so many things diminish: lifespan, mercifulness. People become more and more demoniac. So this gender bending and blurring, and just like what is being read here in the Bhagavatam, people's preoccupation with sex, like you were saying, people identify in this way. This is illusion. At the time of death, all of this is taken away. At the time of death, whether you're a man or a woman or transgender or homosexual or lesbian or whatever, or combination, this way, that expression, it's all changed. So the whole point of what we're trying to say here is that you have a spiritual identity which has nothing to do with gender or sex as it is expressed or is commonly or readily, let's say, identifiable within people in this present time that we're living in.
So we're all non-binary.
Excuse me?
So it seems like all of our souls are non-binary in a sense.
Well, I mean, ultimately here, this is Krishna. Krishna is the Param Purush. He is the supreme male personality. Actually, there was one incident. A very great sannyasi, or a person in the renounced order of life, Srila Jiva Goswami, he was the disciplic, he was the head of the sampradaya in the late 1500s, early 1600s. And there was a very famous female saint, maybe you ever heard of her name, Mirabai. Mirabai was she was a princess, and there were many, many kingdoms in India at that time. That's one of the atrocities of the British, that they came in there and tried. Anyway, that's another story. And she was so much a devotee. And she's a woman, and she was a beautiful young woman, and she's a princess, and she should be married, for political reasons, make her right, this and that. And she refused. I will not allow any man of this material world to touch my body. It's called Stribov. She was approaching God as her supreme lover and husband. And she was experiencing like ecstasy in that way, and a miracle is associated with her, that she became a liability to her father and family. It's almost like honor killing. So what they did, now she was worshiping deities of Krishna, and there was a sacred stone called the Shalagram Shila, which comes from the Kali Gandaki River in the Annapurna mountain range, which is now in Nepal, of the Himalayas. I actually have some of these sacred stones myself. And her brother, who was not a very good, like with the father, we're going to do a mercy killing, said, we want to give you this gift in a wicker basket, but they put a poisonous rattlesnake and said, we're giving you this deity of Krishna. And she said, oh, thank you very much. She opened it in the presence of all, and that there was no rattle. And actually that the snake with a cobra, it turned into a stone, the Shalagram Shila. And some of these stones have amazing miracle markings on it of Ananta Sesh, the cobra hooded Sesha, which corresponds with Lord Vishnu, for example. So later in her life, she went to Vrindavan, which is the quintessential place for those who wish to approach Krishna in conjugal amorous love. And she wanted to meet and talk with Jiva Goswami. She's in a woman's body, but she's, very elevated. Jiva Goswami is very elevated. What to speak of 400 or 500 years ago, how pristine the atmosphere was at the time. And Jiva Goswami said, I am an renounced daughter. I cannot meet with any woman. And she sent back a message, since when is there more than one male in Vrindavan? And he could understand the caliber of this personality, and they had a meeting, not private, but with extent. So advanced personality. So I would say for people who are like so much wrapped up in this issue, try to understand the possibility of spiritual identity. In terms of non-binary, on the spiritual perfection, you can have a male body and a female body in relationship to Krishna simultaneously, separately and simultaneously. But it has nothing to do with sex attraction in this world, zero. And that is actually the key to understand these I'm speaking these things because I think it's necessary or appropriate in accord with the concerns that you were speaking here, but this knowledge is so sublime and so satisfying. I myself, I lived in Vrindavan for 12 years. I've been coming and going there since 1984, and it's a completely different situation. It's Krishna's quintessential pilgrimage place, the topmost pilgrimage place, and Krishna manifests these tirtha. They're called tirtharaj, king of all holy places. So we go and the atmosphere is a replica of the highest positions in the spiritual world, where we all have the eligibility to go to, just like where we all going to go when we leave this room. That's your choice, or you could go wherever you want. Like I said, this life is like a junction. So the knowledge of spiritual identity, and that's why we control and regulate our sex desire. Sex is meant to create a facility so that God can give a soul the opportunity to have the human form of life again, so they can perfect themselves and get out of this mess of repeated birth and death once and for all, never coming back. No more repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. That's why, it's such a sacred thing. When a man and woman come together, the sperm and the ovum meet, the soul is placed at that time. It's a great responsibility. Actually, in Krishna consciousness, you know, both the man and the woman, they prepare their consciousness. An instruction is given to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on your japa beads, your private meditation beads, 50 rounds. That takes about, how many hours does that take? 6 hours. So when the man and woman come together for union, their consciousness is in a very exalted place. It's not just like getting on and like, all animals do that. The same thing, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. How is human life different than animals? Even Bob Dylan wrote a song back in the day, if the dogs run free, why can't we? You go to the dog, you bring your dog, other dogs, they're all just smelling each other's genitals. And is that what human beings are supposed to do? Those are a few things I could say to that. But try to understand, you should read Krishna's pastimes in the spiritual world with the gopis, his conjugal lovers, his coward boyfriends. Prabhupada says that if you have an attraction to love Krishna in conjugal ras as a girlfriend, but at the same time want to be the most intimate Priyanamsaka boyfriend with Krishna, you should follow Sri Dham, who is one of the most closest associates. And then that entails understanding what is the potency of the internal energy. We are the marginal energy. We're spirit soul, but we're in the material energy. This is the lower energy, the material energy. But we're meant to be associated with Krishna under the jurisdiction or under the authority of the internal pleasure-giving potency, which is Radharani, the feminine counterpart of the supreme whole Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare is Radharani. These are very sublime and deep and profoundly satisfying topics, which I would highly recommend that you try to explore and understand, and that will help you to understand what's going on in the present context. Okay? Hare Krishna. I'm sorry if I offended you or anyone. Yes.
I have a question from young people, not from you exactly, but from young people, yes. Yeah, so for them, how to stay on spiritual path nowadays, because they don't have great intelligence, they don't have taste.
Really?
Intelligence, very.
Well,
And they in her mind attacked on daily basis by video games, TikTok, YouTube,
Yeah.
and all these material things. It's much more intense than before. So
Right.
they don't have too much taste. They don't have too much intelligence, right? So how could they stay on spiritual path? For example, I'm trying to support, but so my child surrounded by materialistic friends and people.
Yeah.
And I see this degrading effect of this surrounding.
Well, first and foremost, for everyone, and especially for children, everything is voluntary. And back to, we should only do something if we want to do it. So, and childhood is a very special time to be able to, without the burden of having to support oneself in the material world, as the parents, the father and mother, and provide a nice facility for the children. They have a happy childhood. Try as far as possible to make these topics, cool and enjoyable and something intriguing and interesting. If you have the means,
I mean,
take a family vacation and go to some of these
I
places.
couldn't be around for
Or-
24/7, but
No.
24/7 she's my child mind attacked by all these materialistic things. And they so attracted, so just watch TV, everything like bright and fun and cool and the school the same, so.
The one thing to keep in mind that devotion and spiritual understanding is completely transcendental to all stages of life. Krishna says, if you become conscious of me, you will cross over all the obstacles of conditional life by my grace. I don't know if there's a picture of it, but there's changing bodies, the spirit soul from the embryo, in the embryo, to being out of the embryo, birth, growth, all the different stages, to death. These are stages of conditional life. Like my body is a certain number of years old, but I don't feel any different than I did when I was a child or a teenager or any stage of life. Yeah, you can show everybody. But at the same time, you kind of, when you're like so young, you can't, first you crawl and then you learn how to walk, and then up to the age of 5, it should be like complete freedom. And then like 5 to, this is what I'm saying the standard, up to the age of 5 or 15, you should give good instruction, but after 15, 16, you have to treat them as a friend. And the danger of puberty and that age is but if there's good kind of grounding earlier, and it's also a carryover from the last life. That's another thing, something we even have the comment saying, he's an old soul. Old soul, we're all old souls because we're all eternal, but how much you desired and cultivated and percentage of completion of what is required to actually transcend it all once and for all, that stays with you. That's not lost at the time of death. Your sexual attraction and all these things, that's finished. You don't take that with you. You take your karma with you, which is the aggregate total of your good and bad, your meritorious, your demeritorious activities, and your desires. That goes into the next life. And you have no understanding where you're going next. Here, like we're going to walk out this door, we all know where we're going, we're very confident, there's no anxiety. So for one who is just living for sensual gratification at the time of death, they have no knowledge, no guarantee. The laws of nature will make that decision where you go. Very frightening. So the children are naturally dependent on the parents. So if the parents are loving and you don't force anything, but they see the good example, even if many years go by, they do their own thing or whatever, they'll come back and appreciate. Those are just some things I could say. But as far as like the glass of milk, it's got ink in it. If you keep pouring, nice white milk in it, the black ink will come out, and ultimately it'll be all white milk. So it's very difficult. It's Kali Yuga, as he was saying. All these video games. Like for me, if I could go buy the latest record album from Corvettes for $3.25, Led Zeppelin 2 or something in 1971. That was my, But now it's like anything, everywhere, at all times, So it's a challenge. I'm not in that position, so I don't want to sermonize or lecture or holier than thou to you, but just try your best,
Doing a good job.
Yes.
Oh, just a supplement what you said. It just seems perfect. I was thinking of Subhangada's teacher. Anyway, makes it hard for me to make that point. Like how old's your daughter? Yeah, like that age, exactly that age. So from what I understand, well, you know, since she's my wife, I understand how she can be, you know, stand up for, without always for how things should be. Very strict, but she's real loving. So my understanding is like the kids, they like really love her, and you know, like when they're like 3-4 years older, when they're, you know, 5th grade, they all go like running over to her when they see her and stuff. So I was just thinking, with all those influences, which, you know, in one sense, unless you want to keep your kid at home and not let them explore the world at all, and most parents wouldn't make that choice. But assuming that that's not your choice, of course I know it's not, then just the fact that your example as a good devotee and a loving father, that has like a lasting effect for what that's worth. Because you're exemplifying all those qualities that Rama is discussing, and you just be yourself, and they feel it, even if you're not, you know, like Rama was saying, like you're not necessarily instructing them necessarily all the time. You just let them be, but because you're who you are and you're following, makes a difference.
Should we go on to Kirtan?
Unless Prabhu had a question, I wasn't sure. She did not? Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Guneshwar Prabhu? It's Guneshwar. Guneshwar.
Guneshwar, okay.
Yeah.